Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Traster, and I am here today with Dan Dalton, one of the founders of Dalton and Tomich. Dan has helped local churches leave the denomination and keep their property. So Dan, what is the United Methodist Church separation protocol?
Hi, Emily. This is a question we get quite a bit from potential clients throughout the United States. It's very important to know at the outset that it's a proposal. It hasn't been adopted by General Conference. It hasn't been adopted by anybody. In fact, it wasn't even a sanctioned group that put it together. Rather, it was 5 affinity groups that really got together and they decided that we can't live together anymore. We just can't. And realistically, we haven't been for the last 40 years or so. But we can't stay together because it's just a divided house at this point in time. So the best thing to do is to separate. So what this group did is they got together with a negotiated facilitator, an attorney, and they came up with certain parameters as to how to separate, how to graciously separate in the church. Ironically, this is the second time this happened in the history of the United Methodist Church. The first time was in 1844 when there was a division in the church over slavery. And the church separated at the General Conference in 1844 and had a separation protocol, a document just like this one that's being proposed at that point in time. So there are a certain number of elements to this proposal, and I just have my notes in front of me just so I want to get this exactly right for you, just so you know. So under the separation protocol, an entire annual conference can leave the denomination. The annual conference can vote with 57% of the vote of the annual conference is to leave the denomination. They can do so. So if you're in Michigan, where I'm at, for example, the Michigan Annual Conference votes, they're probably going to stay within the United Methodist denomination. But if they wanted to go to a new ultra-progressive denomination, they can do that. There will be 3 denominations at the end of the day. There's going to be a conservative denomination. There's going to be the remnants. There's going to be the remnants of the United Methodist Church, where it'll be kind of a mixture of a conservative and a liberal denomination. And then there's going to be a very liberal denomination that results. So churches and annual conference will have that decision. If an annual conference votes 57% vote to leave, they can certainly do that. General conferences generally, as proposed, require a 2/3 vote to join a denomination. So with the central conference, they can vote to change and to leave the United Methodist denomination. There's a proposal by the African bishops to reduce this vote to 57%. So that will be negotiated whenever this protocol is voted on. Local churches can leave by a simple majority vote. So if your annual conference decides to stay in the denomination and the local church wants to leave, it can do so if there's a simple majority vote, or if 2/3 of the majority vote at the annual conference can do so. Importantly, if the local church does nothing, they stay in the United Methodist Church. And again, a lot of that is by design, because the United Methodist Church knows that a lot of churches aren't going to do anything. So if your local church does nothing, you're still part of what's remaining of the United Methodist Church. If a local church leaves to join a new denomination, it can keep its property. It's going to have to pay pension costs as determined by the annual conference. It's going to have to pay additional cost as well. It's going to be required to keep up with its apportionments until the time of disaffiliation. But if it joins another Wesleyan or another Methodist type denomination, whether it's the new conservative or progressive denomination or another Methodist group, it could do so. If the local church wants to leave and become independent under the protocol, and it wants to keep its property, there's going to be additional fees and costs on top of what the other local churches would pay to join the new denomination, as determined by the annual conference. So the annual conference, in a nutshell, is going to give you a number, and then you're going to have to take that number. And your decision is either to take the number and pay it and be gone, or not take it and stay within the denomination. You could also move right now, and that's what we would recommend if you're going to become independent, and you'd probably pay a lot less, but that's neither here nor there at this point in time. All assets of the denomination will stay with the United Methodist Church. with the exception of a few payouts. So that means to your general conference boards will stay. There will be some payouts to the new denomination and to some other initiatives as well. Your pension plan will remain viable, will stay within Westpath. So your pension's always going to be with you. If you leave to a new traditional or liberal denomination, they likely will have Westpath as well. So it'll be with them as well. If you become independent, you can continue on with your pension that you had and just start a new retirement plan. After the general conference, the United Methodist Church that remains will continue on with their meeting, and they will create new regional conferences and substantially revise the Book of Discipline. So you need to know that that Book of Discipline is going to change, and it's going to be a more liberal Book of Discipline after this occurs once you stay within the United Methodist denomination. Annual conferences have 2.5 years to decide to make that vote to leave the denomination. So after this decision is passed as currently proposed in the separation protocol, you've got 2.5 years for your annual conference to get together to have a vote. And local churches have 4 years to decide to stay or go. So the reason for the difference in the timing is that if your annual conference leaves to a new denomination, you can just stay with that annual conference, and that's going to go with that new denomination. If you want to stay in the United Methodist Church, you make a decision at that point in time as well, or go to a new progressive denomination or whatever the denomination is. But you have 4 years to make that decision. If you don't make that decision within 4 years, you're going to remain part of the remnant of the United Methodist Church. In the separation protocol, the parties also agreed to 2 important things. One is that there will be no more church trials for violating the Book of Discipline. So there hasn't been church trials, and there probably won't be church trials on pastors, bishops, or anyone else who violated the Book of Discipline. They've agreed on that. And the annual conferences have agreed to not close churches, a moratorium on closing churches. Now, this hasn't happened. I just know from practicing and know from work we do across the country that annual conferences have closed local churches, but in the separation protocol, they promised not to close churches until after this passes and after the votes occur. So that, in a nutshell, is the separation protocol. It's the ability to leave the United Methodist Church and keep your property and define what those costs are. At the end of the day, though, you need to know that those costs are going to be substantially higher than if you leave today, if you want to become independent. And not necessarily true if you're going to join a new denomination, but if you're going to be independent and leave, you're going to pay a lot more if you wait than if you leave today. And that's just through experience, what we've experienced representing local churches throughout the country. So that's the separation protocol in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it. It's not going to be passed as presented. We already know that. The African bishops have said they don't agree with that, and there'll be amendments. And it's like with any other general conference, there's going to be amendments to it. You can expect that. And you can expect that it may not even be proposed at a general conference. We don't even know that for certain. We don't even know when the next general conference will occur. But we do know there's a plan. We do know that people have agreed to it. Whether it will follow through is to be seen.
Thank you for your insight, Dan. And if you're watching this video and you have any questions, or if we could be of any service to you or your church, please feel free to give our office a call or send us an email. Thank you.